Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Vietnam is a country in Southeast Asia. It has a very long history. For many years, people in Vietnam had to fight for their country. They fought to be free and to make their own identity. This story will tell about Vietnam's journey from old times to the present day. Vietnam's people worked hard to build their country and make it strong. They created a special way of life, a unique identity. Ideas and influences came to Vietnam from many places. Countries like China and France brought new things. But the people were strong. They kept their own culture, language, and traditions alive. One very important and difficult time in Vietnam's history was the war that happened in the middle of the 20th century. Many people call this the Vietnam War. This war was long and caused a lot of suffering. It changed the country in big ways. We will learn why this war was so important and what happened. As we learn about the past, we will see Vietnam's culture. We will look at the ideas and beliefs that are important to Vietnamese people. We will also see how outside influences played a part. But even with these outside ideas, Vietnam stayed very much itself. From stories of the first people to the modern country we see today, Vietnam's history is about struggle and a strong spirit. It is a story about people who always wanted to be independent. They built their nation over a very long time, facing many difficult times. This book will show you the path Vietnam took. It is a story of strength, culture, and change. Let's start exploring this interesting past together. 2. Very old Vietnam. Vietnam's very old history begins with myths and legends. These stories tell about important beginnings of the nation. One famous story is about a dragon king named Loc Long Quan and a beautiful fairy named Ao Co. People believe the first families of Vietnam came from them long, long ago. This idea is still important today, showing Vietnamese people as children of the dragon and fairy. Thousands of years ago, the Dong Son people lived near the Red River in northern Vietnam. They were good farmers and grew rice in wet fields, which was very important food. They are most famous for making beautiful bronze drums. These drums have pictures and art on them that tell us about their life and beliefs. This Dong Son period is seen as very important for Vietnam's early culture and history. Later, different groups of Vietnamese people came together. They formed early communities and small kingdoms like Van Long. The Lac Viet people were one of these first groups. Leaders called the Hung Kings ruled these lands for some time. Their rule was connected to the older Dong Son culture. Chinese writings from that time began to talk about states in this area, calling them Nam Viet. Then a big change happened. China, a powerful country to the north, came and took control. China ruled over the lands of Vietnam for a very, very long time, about 1,000 years. This period was difficult for the Vietnamese people living under foreign rule. They learned some things from China, like ways to rule, writing, and new ideas. But they kept their own ways and their own spirit. Even under Chinese rule, the wish for independence was strong. Two sisters became very famous heroes. Their names were Trung Trắc and Trung Ni. In the year 40, they led a big fight against the Chinese governor. It was one of the first big fights against foreign rule in this part of Asia. The sisters fought bravely and made their own independent country for a short time, ruling as queens. However, the Chinese army was very big and strong. After just a few years, the Trung sisters were defeated in battle, and China ruled again. But their brave fight was never forgotten by the people. The Trung sisters are still seen as national heroes today. Their story shows the strong spirit of the Vietnamese people and their long fight for their own land and freedom and keeping their identity. 3. Kings and invaders. After the time of Chinese rule and the Trung sisters, a new leader helped Vietnam become free. His name was No Queen. In the year 939, he fought a big battle and won against the Chinese army. This was a very important moment. Vietnam was free again after about 1,000 years. This started Vietnam's own time with its own kings. The country was called Dai Viet. Many strong kings and queens ruled Dai Viet for hundreds of years. Different families, like the Li family, the Tran family, and the Lei family, held power. They built a strong country. These kings and armies had to fight many times to keep Vietnam free. Big armies from China tried to invade again, but the Vietnamese kings fought them back. One very famous time was when the Tran kings fought against the Mongols, who were a very powerful army. The Vietnamese won these fights and stayed independent. Dai Viet grew bigger during this time. The kingdom moved south into new lands. As the country grew, so did its culture. New ideas came from other places. Ideas from Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism became important. People built temples and places for learning. A famous place is the Temple of Literature in the capital city, which was like a first university. Even with new ideas from outside, Vietnamese culture stayed special and strong. People took ideas but made them Vietnamese. Later, many years after the strong kings, the country became weak and was divided. Two big families, the Trin in the north and the Nguyen in the south, ruled different parts. But later, a leader from the Nguyen family, King Gia Long, made Vietnam one country again in 1802. This was the last family of kings to rule Vietnam before a new big change came. 4. France takes over. After the time of the strong kings, Vietnam faced new challenges. The country was divided between two powerful families, the Trinh family in the north and the Nguyen family in the south. There was fighting and unrest for a while. But then a leader from the Nguyen family, Nguyen An, managed to unite the country again. He became King Gia Long in the year 1802. This was the start of the Nguyen dynasty, the last line of kings to rule Vietnam. King Gia Long made Vietnam one country after many years of division. However, this new unity did not last long before a new outside power. In the middle of the 1800s, ships from France began to come to Vietnam's shores. France had its own interests in the region. Step by step, France started to take control of different parts of Vietnam. Vietnamese people did not want this and tried to fight back. They fought against the French soldiers and their modern guns. But France was a strong European country, and the Vietnamese forces could not stop them everywhere. By the year 1887, France had taken full control. They made Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia into one large colony they named French Indochina. The Nguyen kings were still there, but they lost their real power. French officials made all the important decisions for the country. Life changed greatly and was very difficult for most Vietnamese people under French rule. The French rulers were mainly interested in taking wealth from Vietnam. They took control of the best land, especially in the south, and used it for big farms. They grew rubber, coffee, and rice to sell for profit in other countries, especially France. Vietnamese farmers who had worked their land for generations often lost it. They were forced to become workers on the French farms or were made to work on building roads, bridges, and ports for the French. These jobs paid very little, and the work was hard. Many families remained very poor. Records show that by the start of the Second World War, around half of the people in the countryside did not own any land at all. The French did not help the Vietnamese people improve their lives or get good education. Very few schools were built for local children. In fact, by the year 1939, most Vietnamese people, about 80%, could not read or write. This was worse than before the French took over. Despite the hardship, some Vietnamese people who had contact with the French learned new ideas. They learned about independence and the idea of a nation ruling itself. This small group, often educated in French schools or in France, started to believe that Vietnam should be free. They became early leaders in the fight for Vietnam's independence. People like Phan Boi Chau and Phan Chau Chin were important thinkers at this time, planning for a future without French control. Their ideas would become very important later. The desire for freedom began to grow slowly but strongly among the Vietnamese people. 5. Fighting French rule. World War II brought big changes to Vietnam. During the war, from about 1940 to 1945, Japan took control of Vietnam from France. The French government lost its power there. When Japan lost the war in 1945, there was no clear leader in Vietnam. This was a chance for Vietnamese people to become free. A man named Ho Chi Minh was a strong leader. He wanted Vietnam to be an independent country. He led a group called the Viet Minh. This group was ready to fight for Vietnam's freedom. On September 2, 1945, Ho Chi Minh stood in a city called Hanoi. He said that Vietnam was now a free and independent country. He used words that sounded like the words used when America became free a long time ago. But France did not want to lose Vietnam. France wanted Vietnam back as its colony. So fighting started between the Viet Minh and the French army. This fight became a war called the First Indochina War. It lasted for many years, from 1946 to 1954. The Viet Minh fought hard against the French soldiers. The Vietnamese people wanted their country back. A very important battle happened at a place called Dien Bien Phu. The Viet Minh soldiers fought bravely and won this battle. This was a big defeat for France. After losing at Dien Bien Phu, France had to leave Vietnam. In 1954, countries met in a city called Geneva to talk about Vietnam. They made an agreement called the Geneva Accords. This agreement said that Vietnam would be split into two parts, North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh's government was in the north. The agreement also said there should be elections later to make Vietnam one country again. But these elections never happened. Ho Chi Minh said that he fought mostly because he loved his country and wanted it to be free. He said it was patriotism that moved him more than the idea of communism alone. But the world was in a time called the Cold War. Big and powerful countries like America and the Soviet Union were against each other. This made the situation in Vietnam much more difficult and complex. The split of Vietnam and the failure of elections set the stage for more conflict. 6. The War with America. After the country was divided into North and South Vietnam, fighting did not stop. The North was helped by countries that were communist. The South was helped by America. Small fights grew bigger in the late 1950s and early 1960s. America sent more help to the South Vietnamese government. Then, in 1964, there was an event called the Gulf of Tonkin Incident. After this, the American Congress made a rule that allowed President Johnson to use military force in Vietnam. Starting in 1965, American combat soldiers came to Vietnam. President Johnson ordered bombing of places in North Vietnam. American Marines also landed near Da Nang. More and more soldiers came. By 1968, there were 500,000 American soldiers in Vietnam. The war was very hard and cruel. There was a lot of fighting, both in big battles and small attacks. Many people died. About 58,220 American soldiers died. The number of Vietnamese people who died was much higher. Over 1 million soldiers from the North and the Viet Cong group died. About 250,000 soldiers from the South also died. And around 2 million Vietnamese people who were not soldiers died. The land was also badly hurt. Bombs and artillery were used constantly. Dangerous chemicals like Agent Orange and firebombs like napalm were used. These hurt people and the environment for a long time. In America, many people did not agree with the war. Big protests happened in American cities in the late 1960s. People marched and showed signs saying they wanted the war to end. Vietnamese people often remember this war differently than Americans. In Vietnam, this war is often called the American War. For many Vietnamese, it was a fight for their country's independence and to make Vietnam one country again. They see it as a time they fought against foreign soldiers who were on their land. Americans often focus on their own experiences and losses during the war. By 1973, things changed in America. President Nixon signed an agreement called the Paris Peace Accords. This ended America's direct part in the fighting. The last American combat soldiers left Vietnam in 1973. However, fighting between North and South Vietnam still went on. The government in the North wanted to make Vietnam one country again, under their rule. In April 1975, forces from North Vietnam entered Saigon, the main city of South Vietnam. The government of the South gave up. The war finally ended in Vietnam. In July 1976, North and South Vietnam became one united country again, led by the Communist Party. 7. New ways for Vietnam. After the Long War finished in 1975, Vietnam faced big problems. The country was very poor. Many roads, farms, and factories were damaged. People were tired from years of fighting. The government, led by the Communist Party, took control of all of Vietnam. In the South, people who had supported the old government sometimes had to go to places called re-education camps. The government tried to run the economy in a new way, like the Soviet Union. The state tried to control everything. They took over private businesses and farms. But this plan did not work well. There were not enough goods, and the country was still poor. Vietnam became politically isolated from many other countries. Vietnam also had conflicts with its neighbors after the Big War. In 1978, Vietnam sent soldiers to Cambodia. Then, in 1979, China attacked northern Vietnam for a short time. These events made the situation difficult. Life was very hard for many people in Vietnam. Because of the problems and lack of freedom, hundreds of people left the country. They traveled in small boats, often in dangerous conditions. People around the world called them the boat people. Many went to countries like the United States, Australia, and France. In 1986, the leaders of Vietnam decided things had to change. They started a new plan called Đổi mới. This word means renovation. The government began to open the economy. They allowed people to start businesses and sell goods more freely. They also welcomed companies from other countries to invest money in Vietnam. This change was very important. Vietnam's economy started to grow quickly. Many people were lifted out of poverty. Exports like rice, coffee, and clothes became popular around the world. Cities like Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi grew fast and became more modern. Vietnam started to join international groups like ASEAN and the WTO. In 1995, Vietnam and the United States started to have normal relations again after many years. Today, Vietnam is a country that looks to the future, but also remembers its past. It honors the heroes who fought for its independence through history, like Ho Chi Minh, the Trung sisters, and Tran Hung Dao. The government says that the country's success comes from fighting for independence and following the path of socialism. Life is much better for many Vietnamese people now, but challenges still remain. 8. Vietnam now, a strong country. Today, Vietnam is a country with one main political party. It is called the Communist Party. This party leads the government. Life in Vietnam is mostly peaceful, and things work well. People do not have full freedom to speak or write everything they want. The government wants people from all groups in Vietnam to live together happily. Many Vietnamese people say they do not have a religion, but Buddhism is the largest religion in the country. Vietnam is careful with other countries, but it is friends with many countries and sells and buys things from them. This includes China. Vietnam's economy is still growing. There are new companies from Vietnam and new technology. Vietnamese culture is strong. It has its own language, special parties like Tet, Lunar New Year, beautiful old clothes like the Áo Dai, and famous food like pho. Many Vietnamese people live in other countries, but they still keep their Vietnamese culture alive. They remember their home country. Vietnam is a country today because its people fought hard for many years to be free. Their strong hearts, fighting together for a long time, and special culture made them a different nation. The Communist Party says it brought freedom and socialism to make Vietnam modern. Where Vietnam is on the map also made its history important. So, Vietnam is strong because of its people, their fight, their culture, and their hope for tomorrow. What do you think is the most important thing that made Vietnam a strong country today?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.